They'll be unmatched, unclassified, historic, and as popular as wrestling itself in the unveiling of what will be billed as one of the top wrestling talk shows in the nation. We'll bring you the legends, the coaches, the perspective, and the 0 to 100 wrestling matchups that change the gravity of the sport in 2-on-1 with Mike and Mike.
If I understand it correctly, just for people that are listening at home, they want to join, they want to go ahead and be Jenna as they get older. Are they just going and joining the military, or do they have to speak to some people prior to that? And then once they get in the military, are they then getting a job and then applying to the WCAP program, or do you go into the military and you go right into the WCAP program?
Welcome to 2-on-1 with Mike and Mike.
Hi, this is Michael Vetrano from the Mike and Mike Wrestling Show, along with my co-host, Michael Torriero. Our next guest is Gary Redding. Gary Redding is the vice chair of NYWAY Wrestling here in New York. He's also the chair of the Long Island region for NYWAY. For those of you who don't know, NYWAY is a part of a system across the United States that has different representation in each state, which boils up to an overarching organization in the country I think Gary will talk about. First of all, first question, Gary. I know that you're a twin. How do I know that we're talking to you and not your twin?
We're actually kind of unique, you know. He's a lefty and I'm a righty.
Oh, okay.
So
now,
just ask one of us to write and you'll figure it out.
Okay. Because I've seen you guys. It's tough to figure you guys out.
He's got a full beard now.
Oh, okay. So Gary, you're coming to us from Ames, Iowa, correct?
Got it.
Okay. Gary, a couple of things that we wanted to talk to you about on the show was, first of all, I know that you're doing a lot of things, for wrestling. One of them is there's an activity going on, obviously, with COVID and the pandemic. We potentially may not have wrestling at all, at least in the state of New York. Obviously, other areas of the country are finding a way. I wanted you to talk to me about, I keep hearing about this underground wrestling league that you and I think some of your colleagues are forming. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'll kind of take a step back and just give you kind of how the impetus on how we kind of came to this. I guess they had the RTC stuff and everybody saw these duels getting started up and it was great for the sport. So now we've kind of tried to mimic that on the high school level. So, because I've been around for a little while and with NYWAY and helping USA as well, guys came to me and said, look, can you help us put these dual teams together and these kind of, all-star events? So I said, great, no problem. So I was probably done with my third one and doing another all-star. And I said, well, guys, there's something wrong with this. Like, we're kind of getting the same exact kids to wrestle in these events. So, you're going to get the Tituses and the Liardis and the Gallaghers, and all these kids are going to get plenty of really high-level events. But what about everybody else? What about all the kids that are the number 2s and the number 3s and have worked hard to get to this level? And, I'm not going to get into any political views. I mean, I'm furious that New York is really, I think, the only state, if not maybe there's one or two others at this point, that have not allowed winter sports. And I said, look, we've got to try and figure out a way, because I talked to guys like yourself, Mike, and Mike and Mike, and all the coaches say the same thing. Like, we're losing our kids. They're not coming down to the clubs. They're not coming down. And, the kids that aren't going on to college, we've lost them completely. The kids that are going to college, those kids are coming down instead of 4 or 5 times a week like they used to. They're coming down 2 or 3 and maybe not getting the same type of workouts in. So we tried to come up with a way to kind of re-inspire the kids on Long Island, and I hate that it's not the whole state, but for me, it was really more of a Long Island thing. So we started this underground Long Island championship, which, started to kind of get legs and finally, hopefully morphed into, what we want it to be.
Wrestling, a sport measured by technique, mental toughness, discipline, and persistence. But it also brings children with all skill levels interested in the sport in droves when there's great coaching. Team Purcelli Training Center in Iowa is at the epicenter of great wrestling. And being one of the best youth clubs in the Midwest, the center has a deep understanding for community and wellness. At the top of their game, they may be in Iowa, but they have nationwide appeal and a national model for success. Run by U.S. Veterans National Champion Anthony Purcelli, Purcelli's vision and mission of the center is to build children from the ground up with their wellness in mind. To Purcelli, it doesn't matter if the children are novice wrestlers or state champions. His goal is to build character, create a positive, nurturing, and spirited environment, and to produce respectful ambassadors in his community. The training center benefits people from all ages, ranging from the average fitness workout to mixed martial arts, specialized youth training, and self-defense. Purcelli Training Center, where excellence is the standard.
You know what I was saying is, guys, we speak to a lot of the coaches out there, guys like yourselves, and they're all talking about how they're losing their kids, and they're speaking about how, the upper tier kids that were, looking to go to college and go on to the next level, those kids, instead of 4 and 5 times a week, they're coming down 2 or 3. I was talking with Jamie St. John, one night, and Jamie was saying, look, I had kids that we've been grooming now for almost a year, and they were super, super excited to get back to the season and see if all their hard work paid off. He said, I lost those kids.
Yeah, not to interject, but Jamie's at Huntington now, and I'm looking for big things in terms of Huntington, in terms of their improvement. I think they're going to be back.
They started up the Lone Wolf program, which it's another great program on Long Island. Yep. And, he said, look, I don't know how I can get these kids back into wrestling because they don't have plans on going to college. They don't have plans. So why would they even come down, if they have no future? So we started kind of the Long Island Championship idea was to try and get as many of the kids back as we could. And then, like I said, Tom Aiello came to me and said, Gary, what about starting a league, and having these kids come down? So now we got the whole kind of COVID thing, and we're trying to figure out how to navigate, this league through that and still kind of follow all the protocols because, look, we don't want anybody getting sick or anybody getting hurt or, anything of that nature. So then we kind of developed this league and it morphed from, I guess the original idea was to kind of have each club have a dual team and have that dual team go to another club and wrestle. And then it was, okay, well, that's not really the idea. We're not looking for competition. We're not looking to see if Vogar's club is better than Ascend or if Ascend is better than Lone Wolf. We're just trying to get the kids back on the mats. So instead of going with the kind of format of, 106, 113, 120, and so on and so forth, which would probably exclude, 2/3 of each guy's club, we've had numerous Zoom meetings, and we came up with the idea that instead of going with it as a dual event, let's do it like a middle school event where, if Mike Petrovich, if the Barn is wrestling Vogar one week and that's on the schedule, Mike calls up Vogar. And they get on the phone, they look at their rosters, and they say, okay, this kid is good to wrestle this kid, and they just match everybody up.
Have you guys considered or spoke with Jason Layton about his system and being able to modify that into what you're doing and have his analytics be able to track to be able to,
it's
to, be able to make that track?
Yep.
Jason is very involved in this. He's on every Zoom call. Great. And he's he's got his way, and then there's the other way, and I think we'll be able to find a nice middle to utilize both, because we definitely would love to be able to use his metrics. We've kind of designed this program, and hopefully over the next 2 weeks, Tommy Aiello is a guy that's going to help out tremendously and get us to, once we get all the teams involved, then we're going to have a schedule put out, and it's only going to be 4 weeks through the month of February. So everybody's not going to get to wrestle everybody, but we'll try and keep it logistically and, look at the rosters and say, look, this guy's got a lot of kids in this area and this guy does too. So let's match those teams up.
Right. And Tom Aiello is unique, right? Because he has a boy, his son wrestles for Glenn. He's an up and coming guy. And now his daughter's involved with Razor, and obviously Ted DiPasquale does a tremendous job. So he's super invested, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, that's going to lead to the Long Island Championships. So the month of February will be just a bunch of guys kind of, traveling and, each team traveling to the next team. And then it should lead to March, which will be the Long Island Underground Championships. And we just kind of gave it a funky name, Underground Championships, because that's kind of what it's going to be. It'll be, each club and each facility is going to kind of give us their availability, let us know when they can run events and when we can utilize their room. And then we're just going to schedule. We have, Tejan, I don't know if you guys know Tejan. He's got
Sachem, right? Sachem,
yeah,
right?
He's got a new app that I think we're going to try and utilize for scheduling that he put together for us. So hopefully we can incorporate that as well.
Okay.
And I will tell you this, guys, the one thing that I can absolutely say without a shadow of a doubt, the Long Island wrestling community, once the words kind of got out there, it's really nice to see how kind of endearing and how motivated everybody is to help out.
You want the best of high school wrestling? Long Island Wrestling Association's website brings you the best. Wrestling is one of the toughest blue-collar sports. The sport has tens of thousands of followers, and at the center of it all is the Long Island Wrestling Association, measuring the gravity of the sport. In 2002, National Hall of Fame wrestling inductee Steve Meehan created the #1 source for wrestling news in New York State. With contributors like Long Island Sports Hall of Fame inductee and historian Andy Slauson, the site is the most comprehensive wrestling website in the country for high school wrestling news. With in-depth analysis, entertaining facts, forums, and trending topics, this site has a treasure trove of historic high school wrestling information, with records dating back to the 1930s. There is no better source for high school wrestling coverage. Long Island Wrestling Association, keeping the wrestling world up to speed.
Served well. I just want to take the conversation back to one thing, because we talked about this in the last show, and Gary, you and I have talked about this offline a couple of times, is Frank Popolizio at Journeyman Wrestling has created a state tournament, an opportunity to replace, unfortunately, the New York State tournament, as everyone knows, has been canceled. I will say, I think we're the only state, or one of the only states, that canceled in the whole country. I just want to throw that out there. So it's my understanding that what you're doing has some sort of a tie-in as a qualifying event. Can you tell us about that for that tournament?
Yeah, so it was literally just, I think, Wednesday or Thursday. We got the confirmation from Frank, who, if I can give a little tout to Frank.
For sure, he deserves it. Yeah.
I have told him over the years, and it wasn't just blowing smoke. He has really done a great job of helping our sport, and some people say, oh, it's wrestling, you can't worry about making money in wrestling and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? Maybe at some point we needed to make it a little bit of a business and not just a club, right? Because he's now taken that business, and if you go to any of his events, it's not only one of the most well-run events, but it becomes enjoyable for everybody.
I agree.
Yep. The parents have a good time because everything's so well laid out, and it's not, mishmash trying to figure out where to go and what to do. Everything is done when he says it starts at 9, it starts at 9, so to give a shout out to Frank, he's really done a great job of building events that are great not only for the kids, but for the parents and the families and everybody else. So as you said, we finally got that confirmation that the finalists in the Long Island Championship earn a direct spot into the state tournament, which will be the following month in April.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just to talk a little, Frank is incredible. We've talked about this. I mean, he has, for those of you who don't know, he runs German wrestling. He runs, whether it's different any of the events. He also runs a working farm. People don't know that. He actually has a working farm with animals and livestock. And I think he teaches at Shenandoah High School, and he's the assistant coach. So I'd like to figure out how he finds 40 hours a day in 24 hours. But I think, Mike, you had a couple more things that you want to talk about.
Yeah, when as far as Frank's concerned, I'm saying you want something done, give it to a busy man. There's not a harder working guy out there.
Agreed.
Maybe Corey Dawson. I want to give a shout out to Corey Dawson. He's the hardest working guy.
Yep.
Yeah, he's just the hardest working guy around that I know. I mean, there's a lot of people that work hard, but Frank Popolizio, certainly the grass is greener because he gets up earlier and tends to it more. But talking about the business of what you do, Mr. Redding, when I was a young kid, I always thought that I wanted to try to be a business owner because I didn't play well with others. And I realized, early that I'd probably not be a good employee. Can you talk a little bit about, just some advice you might have for a young kid that's, loves wrestling, wants to continue to wrestle, but might have a little bit of a business sense. What is the advice that you might give somebody in terms of, trajectory, landscape, and the way to go about doing some of the things that you do in the private sector?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go more into the mentality of it, Mike. I think we all, when we get our kids involved in wrestling, we don't know how high they're going to go, or, we have no idea where they're going to make it to. So I think it's really building the foundation of hard work. There is no other job, or other sport, I should say, that is similar to a job. You have, like we talk about, what's the tougher sport? Is it football? Is it lacrosse? Is it wrestling? And I always say, well, I don't know, guys. When you're at the water fountain and you actually have to count how many gulps you take, to me,
yeah. Yeah, we've all been there, right?
That's a tough sport, So I think it's those types of disciplines that people enjoy in wrestlers. And when we bring them into the workforce, it's not just a cliche. It's really, look, this kid has done, they constantly have to make weight. They constantly have to, keep running, going to song, and it's this discipline that, as an employer, a lot of people look for. And I think they find it a lot. Now, look, not every wrestler is going to be your best employee, but, I think it's a great place to look. And I know there are quite a few people on Long Island that, kind of look to the wrestling community first to draw their employees, because of that discipline.
For sure. Before we let you go, I do want to talk a little bit about Zach. What's next with Zach? Again, as Michael mentioned, he won his wrestle off. Is he going to have an opportunity to compete? Kind of what's the next couple weeks? Obviously, we're all following him, rooting for him here on Long Island.
And let me tell you guys, he loves the Long Island support. He really does. He's kind of funny. Me and my wife were here a couple of weeks ago when he won his first match, and he's sitting on the bench, and all you see him with the phone just typing away.
Yeah.
Everybody from Long Island who's writing in. So it's pretty surreal, guys. This is the dream that he wanted and, has really worked for. We got out to Iowa State, can't say enough about the coaching staff and all the people out here who have really made it easy to send your kid halfway across the country. So he's now, like I said, he won his wrestle-offs. And because we're in this weird year where nobody's losing eligibility, he's the starting guy at Iowa State.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so he's 3-0 so far. He won his biggest match last week. He beat the D2, national runner-up, in overtime.
Wow.
So, he's a young kid. He just turned 18 a couple of months ago. So, instead of redshirting, which was kind of the original plan, because no one's got, losing their eligibility, they're taking a lot of the freshmen and kind of throwing them into the fire and seeing how they do, So he's got his first real big test. Well, I guess last week was a big test, the D2 national.
For sure.
So he's got another big test today. They were supposed to wrestle both Arizona State and Missouri today. Unfortunately, Arizona State got canceled due to COVID. They had a couple of kids, we all know Jacory and, Zach.
Jacory Teamer, Arizona State, sure.
Yep. They were hanging out with Jacory and Julian Klebov and, those guys. And unfortunately, the next morning when they got tested, a bunch of kids from Arizona State, were positive and, that event got canceled. But luckily we came out here for a duels, 2 of them. So,
Right.
Yeah, he's got one.
Yeah, so he's got Missouri. He's got a real tough kid. I think he's ranked like 12th or 14th in the country. So he's ready to go. And, those are the kids that if he's going to make some noise this year, he's going to have to knock off the ladder. So, hopefully he's able to do it.
Coach Stresser's just done a tremendous job. Real quick, where can we watch? Is it Big 12 Network? Obviously, Flow Wrestling provides opportunities. Where can we watch him other than those? Is it Big 12 Network?
Yeah, so far everything has been on ESPN Plus.
Okay.
So yeah, all the matches have been on ESPN Plus. If you don't know what time or how to get there, you can go to cyclones.com.
Okay. Which
is their kind of sports, internet portal, and that'll give you all the details on what time to get on and so on and so forth.
Well, we really appreciate your time. I know you're in Ames, Iowa. You're probably looking to travel. Yeah, obviously getting ready for the events and come back. And again, we appreciate your time. You're doing fantastic things, you know, for Long Island, for the state. And again, you know, it's always great to talk to you, and I'm sure I'll see you around. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been great.
Mike, one of the things that you brought up, which again is near and dear to my heart, is, you know, I love NYWAY. I love all opportunities for wrestling, right? And USA Wrestling. Look, I'm not going to say I'm a USA Wrestling over NYWAY guy. I think they both do a great job, but you know, I agree with Mr. Redding when he said that there was a bit of a demise in terms of freestyle and Greco when unfortunately the Empire State Games were lost. So I obviously would love to see that back. But, you know, again, I in my own personal opinion, and I'm sure there's data to support this, that, you know, we'll talk about at the D1 level, most of the NCAA D1 All-Americans and above have wrestled freestyle and Greco. So, you know, it saddens me that we're kind of in the state we're at. And I know that folks on Long Island, Teddy DiPasquale does a great job, and others, Coach Cipriano over at Copeg and others. But what are your feelings? I mean, how much do you think that's impacted us? And do you think that when it comes back, you think it will improve? How much do you think that will improve us, if you will?
Well, look, I don't know what the numbers are in terms of saying that if you don't wrestle freestyle and Greco, you're not going to be successful. You know, it just, in terms of the view that you're taking, if all you hear is to be a Suffolk County, Nassau County champion, a New York State champion, a Michigan State champion, a Hawaii State champion, once you accomplish that, you're kind of wonder what's next. And freestyle and Greco allow you to understand. I mean, I guess you can say there's a national champion, but freestyle and Greco allow you to see the world as being flat. It also allows a lot more fun to happen with young athletes who are doing the sport of wrestling, but they're also learning it, you know, in real time with their cohorts who are also in the gym, learning this new style, which is a little bit more free, if you will. You know, I think it's really important that you know, we try to think about wrestling in terms of where it can take you internationally, and allowing our kids to be able to run the gamut of where wrestling's opportunity can take you fully. If they never learn the international styles of Greco or freestyle, then the world is a lot more limited than if they do have the opportunity to wrestle freestyle and Greco. Perhaps they'll get an inkling or a scratch to see what events are out there, and you know, it'll lead them to different countries and to different areas in the world where if you just focus on folk style alone, that's not a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it like we don't do well, because obviously we you know, compete at a high level and we're very successful. But you know, one thing I want to bring up is I also think you talked about travel. When I was coaching, you know, I was big into the freestyle and Greco circuit, and we traveled everywhere. And I could think of all the bonds that were formed with the kids and the athletes and certainly the coaches. So I think that's part, not to say that there aren't folk style events over the country, but I just think that's part of it. You know, something else is I think that maybe, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I think as coaches, sometimes coaches, maybe they weren't exposed to it, right? So they don't promote it for the kids, right? So if they weren't exposed to
Well, I think the word that
discipline,
I think the word that you're using is promote. Is, you know, our sport does have promoters. There are people and promotions that go and put on large events. The Tulsa Nationals, as an example.
What's going on right now?
The War at the Shore. These are folk style events. They're fantastic events. They give kids and coaches plenty of opportunity. But, you know, I'd like to see, you know, some more promotion. And again, I go back to Joe Usolini, maybe because I know him, but it's also because of how much he's trying, that he's not just trying, he is doing in the Olympic styles. I mean, he has the headlocks on the Hudson, and he is the state director for freestyle and Greco, I think, at this point. And, you know, for my standpoint, I'm a fan of international wrestling. I want to be able to see wrestling last past college. I want to be able to see our best athletes compete at the World and Olympic Games, because that's life-changing for everybody involved, you know, from the red, white, and blue down to, you know, the local bodega in your community. And so I'd like to see wrestling sort of try to be a little bit more unified, not as fractured in their promotions, and understand that if it is for the kids, that there's three styles of wrestling we have to take care of. One that's going to take care of our education, and another two that are going to make the world flat.
I think I'm coming at from a little different angle, so maybe I didn't articulate it properly. What I'm saying is that perhaps certain coaches just weren't exposed to it, right? So if you weren't exposed to a discipline, it's harder to teach it, right? Certainly when you're at the high school level, when they're at their own high school off-season activities, right? So what I'm saying, I think there are opportunities out there to learn, right? Just like we learned folk style or we learned how to do a specific activity, there are activities, even if you weren't exposed to it as a kid, there are ways to get your bronze certification in advance. And I think USA Wrestling does afford those opportunities. And I think that's another way that we can continue to maybe come back to where we're at. And again, so, it's just something to think about, right? So as a coach, if you don't know about it, I think you could seek out information and try to learn it. And there are a number of opportunities to do that.
Yeah, I think that the state directors have been doing a fantastic job in New York, and certainly in other states. I live in Michigan, and I know how well run their state organization is, as Wisconsin, Florida. There's some state organizations that are really run very, very well.
Right.
And New York has always been run very well.
Correct.
But now what they're starting to do is take this regional training center approach, where they're having freestyle and Greco training camps, or at least they were prior to COVID. And there needs to be, you need to be smarter than the tool that you operate. And we can get a lot of research done, and you can get a lot of certifications done, but nothing's going to beat somebody on the ground that's making phone calls, that's organizing and leading people to a single place physically to say, hey, this is how we learn the sport. This is the schedule in which we're doing. I have the ability as a state director to put all these pieces in place. Here are the referees. And I learned that firsthand by, being around some really great people who structured wrestling in New York City in that way. I didn't know it until I was around it, but now that I'm around it, I know how it works, and nothing's gonna beat those state directors getting out there and hammering the phone and making sure that coaches get into a single room when time allows to learn the discipline of Olympic style wrestling.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of it. Certainly the advent of regional training centers. I guess maybe I'm not saying we disagree, but maybe I'm furthering the point of, I just think it also starts with the local coach level, right, to push it and promote it, right? I think, if you have access, who has more access to the athletes than their own coach, right? So XYZ high school, to push it, right? I don't want to belabor the point. I just wanted to talk about, there are opportunities to learn it. There are avenues. We have, you talked about, when talking about in Suffolk County, we have Ted DePasquale, who has numerous accolades, and is really doing a good job. And I wish that others, and I think it will happen over time, as Mr. Redding said. So again, hopefully freestyle and Greco continues to, evolve and has more participation.